Welcome back to the Present Fathers podcast. We have a very special guest in this episode. His name is Farzad Mesbahi. He goes by Farzad on his YouTube channel and other pages. And this was a really special treat for us because he is not yet a father at the time of this recording, but is about 2 months away from experiencing the joy of having a child. In this episode, Farzad shares a little bit of his background, some of his areas of expertise, and really dove into the journey of preparing yourself to becoming a father. And we just explored a wide range of topics that I think are going to be very invigorating for everyone to listen to. Farzad is just one of the best people I've ever met through this podcast. It was an absolute privilege to speak with him. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know you're going to love it. Here are a few of the key topics that we discussed. We cover personal growth and self-reflection, which is very important before becoming a parent. We discuss working together as a couple to ensure that you have healthy boundaries and good process in place in your relationship to prepare for children. And even if you already have kids, that's a very important thing to structure. We talked about filtering advice and building a trusted group of advisors as opposed to just taking anything and everything in your life. We talked about being present and embracing the journey of things, not just the destination. We also talk about differing topics outside of fatherhood, like AI and the advancement of AI and how can we predict the future and what do you think the trends are going to be, and then kind of tie that all back into what will the future look like for our children and how should we prepare as parents. This is a really fun topic in this episode because Farzad kind of lives and breathes in this and has a lot of interesting perspectives that I think you're going to appreciate. And finally, we talk about the importance of legacy, what it means to Farzad and what it means to us, and kind of have a little bit of a back and forth on why we should build a positive legacy with the time that we are given. So without further ado, please give a massive welcome to Farzad on the Present Fathers podcast. You're going to love this episode. Thanks for watching, and here we go. Farzad, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. How are you, man?
Thank you so much for having me. You officially have the award for pronouncing my name better than me. That was awesome.
All right, yeah. I'll take that as a win.
Yes. No, like legit. Like that was really well
We're
done.
Off to a great start here.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 already. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, man. Well, we're pumped to have you on. This is a real treat for us because we get to talk to someone who's about to be a father. So I'm very excited to kind of explore that with you. But you also have a very interesting background. I think a lot of people, obviously follow your YouTube channel now. You've built up something pretty impressive there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who Farzad is, your background, working at Tesla and whatnot, and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. This YouTube thing started as a just complete accident. Before that, so I graduated college in 2009 from Penn State. I graduated with a math major and a stat minor. And then for about 7 years, I was at a pet food distributor, and I rose the ranks in that company. Then I worked at Tesla for about 4 years after that. And then after that, I've been on this sort of journey of like figuring out what I want to do. My wife and I had a lot of just super lucky. We worked really hard for 10 years. We got ourselves in a position where we could, build our own path. And once the universe was like, looks like you're at the spot to kind of do your own thing, we're both like, hell yeah, let's do our own thing, right? And then, so that's been incredibly fun. The YouTube thing came along with that. On a whim, I put up a video talking about my time at Tesla, and then there was a lot of hunger for that kind of stuff. There's that company has a giant following, and the EV space is growing exponentially each year. And I feel like I'm just well equipped to kind of give good insights as far as what's going on. And that's just been a beautiful marriage. And I love to just sit down and just have conversations as well. I like to talk about topics and whatnot. So, and that landed me on what I'm doing right now on YouTube. And it's like a hobby transformed into a business that still feels like a hobby that's a business. It's like so weird. And it's, that makes me feel extremely fortunate and lucky. And that's been my life. And now we have a little baby boy that's due on May 25th. And that's something my wife and I have been talking about having kids for a while. We've known each other. This year will be 10 years. We've known each other. We've been married for 8. And it just felt like the right time for us. It's, I'm 37 this year. Well, I turned 37 in January. And, when I think about my journey to become a father, it's kind of like, sometimes I was like, man, am I waiting too long, to be a dad? But at the same time, I feel like if I look at how my life has happened up to now, I'm so grateful that it's now. And I think my wife feels the same way as well, because we've had to go through a lot of personal growth, and we just not that I have no idea what this thing is, right? It's like, not that you shouldn't go through it or you should go through it. It's just, for me, it just felt like it feels so perfect, and that's what I'm most grateful for, is that this is such an incredible thing that I'm going through now, and I welcome it with open arms. I just feel so ready for it, and now
Yeah.
I'm here talking with y'all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great perspective to have for sure, is definitely that of like hope and excitement. Um, do you mind sharing a little bit about, kind of that personal growth you felt you needed to go through before becoming a father? Because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people on the other end of the spectrum, right? They're like 18, 19, 20, and they already start families. So it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to kind of get your perspective on that.
No, that's absolutely. It's the way I think about it is that I never really had a time to sit down and figure out who I am up until recently. Before that, if I, walk through my background, so I was born in Spain to parents that were immigrants from Iran. So they left Iran in 1979, the revolution. They moved to Spain. My brother and I were born there. And then at age 12, we moved to the States. And then, with zero English. So I had to figure out how to speak English at a time when I'm like the horniest in my life and I can't talk to girls. So I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I have to struggle through that. And then once I was old enough to, graduate college and get a job, then it was just grind, 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 grind. I was extremely career focused. And so was my wife at the time that I met her. And that allowed us to get to the point, 3 years ago, where I was able to start on this journey. And at that point, I was able to sit down and be like, okay, who am I? What do I want? What are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? Do I even want to be a father? Right. Like I never had a chance to sit down, because in my head, I was like, I need to become financially independent because I saw what my parents went through and I'm never going to go through that. And so I need that foundation. And right or wrong, that was my viewpoint. Right.
Yeah, I think that
Um,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
And I think, especially coming from kind of the immigrating to America, and kind of seeing that, I have lots of friends in similar backgrounds, and they've all kind of shared that sentiment too. They watched how hard their parents worked, multiple jobs and stuff to make ends meet, and that's kind of a common sentiment. So I think in many ways it's probably benefited you greatly, right? It just is. It's not bad or good necessarily. It's just a different perspective, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, and that's and I try not to view it as like, oh, that was like the best thing that's ever happened to be at this point. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm also 37 and I could have had some extra years, as a father. So that's like one of the downsides of it. Or, have I burnt off a few years off my life at the end by working so hard, So it's like that's one of the downsides. I feel like nothing is purely good or purely bad. It's just an exchange of positives and negatives, right? So the positive is like great
Yeah.
foundation. Negatives is like, well, maybe you waited a little too long. But that was the perspective. And so and now that I'm here for the last 3 years, sort of sitting down and figuring out who I am, being comfortable with who I am. The YouTube stuff actually helped me a lot with that as well, because I'm making myself really vulnerable to an audience. And so I had to go through a growth phase of it's okay to be who you are, even when people don't like you. Even though I was able to kind of navigate that through my career, I never actually fully leaned into it, and that was a very challenging time for me. But one of the lessons I learned in my life was, if you feel something uncomfortable, that means you're learning. So lean into it, right? And so YouTube was that for me. And after becoming really comfortable with who I am, that's when I was like, dude, like, how cool would it be if I'm able to like raise a kid? And that's when I got that daddy fever, It's like, because everything else kind of became, you know, again, I'm in such an incredibly fortunate part of my life where I can be like, well, the things I've kind of gotten, the things that make me happy kind of thing. But then you start, there's a little bit of emptiness. It's like, okay, so what is this all for? Like, what's the number in the bank account? What's the thing? What's the car? Like, is this really what life's all about? And then I'm like, wait, hold on, I can make a baby. And then when I started thinking about, I'm like, holy crap! I became really excited at the thought of like, my wife and I getting together and having a child. And then I started, becoming obsessed, because I'm always thinking about the future. That's one of the things that I talk about a lot on my channels. Like, how's the future going to play out? And I'm like, holy crap! But I never really thought about it within the context of like raising a child and like, having a family. What does that mean for for, not just for my legacy, but for the world. Like, how can I help the world move forward by adding humans that hopefully do a great job based on my wife and I's experience and thought process, right? And so that became like, okay, that I want that. That's what I want. None of this other shit, I want that. And so, I mean, I get so excited just thinking about it. So that's, and now I'm here. So that's where my mentality is, and that's been my journey to come to this point.
The world gets so much more exciting when you have a legacy and you have children that are going to be a part of that future. Similar experience. I was an older dad like you. I had my son. I think I was 38 when I had my son. So similar age. So you worked with your wife previously. You were partnered with her right in an escape room, right? Of all things, right? Yeah, exactly. So how does that influence your partnership together as a family? Do you think it's easier to work together from a family setting because you've worked together in a business?
That's a great question. I think so, in a way. I think, and what's funny about that is, we started a business, what was it, 2016 we launched. So it was like 2 years after we met. And it was like months before we even got married. So we started a business before we got married. It was like, which is like while we were planning on getting married and before she even moved in with me. So it's like how it's like a little like test of like how best to derail a marriage kind of thing, and like we passed it somehow, right? And that I think that gave us a lot of strength. But I think the overarching premise there is I know exactly what my wife's strengths and weaknesses are, and she knows exactly what my strengths and weaknesses are, because I think being in a business setting really helps uncover those things. Now I don't know how it's going to apply to like having a family and raising a child, because this is uncharted territory for me. But it seems like there's some borrowed skills that we can probably take from those times. And this is where I would love to hear from your opinion, if any of you guys have been exposed to that kind of stuff. Like, are those skills transferable? Like, how have you guys experienced that in your lives?
Yeah, they definitely are. I think if you can work well together, if you travel well together, if you can plan projects well together, that's a great indication that you'll do well as a family unit. I think a lot of men, I know I did. So my personal issue, I had a single mom growing up, and so I didn't really know what a man or a dad is supposed to do. And so the relationship I had with my wife, I think, was fine before we had a child. And then we ran into some challenges because I kind of thought you just do whatever the woman says. That's what TV taught me. That's what I learned. And so we were both very unhappy from that. For a couple of years, it was whatever she wanted, I did. Whatever her plan was, even if I didn't like it, we went that plan, and then both of us were unhappy. So a big change for me that's been really positive is I've learned to grow a set, actually make some of my own decisions. And that's been a game changer. I think it's very important for men to lead and to have a good role in the family. And I didn't for a while. And so, part of that change was talking to these men and George, Brandon, Justin all helped me. They kind of looked at the situation and said, Dustin, you're 6'4", you're a big man, you're not acting like one. You need to change that a little bit. So that my personal experience was a big, put the cookie down. Yep, exactly. And take a leadership role, because it's not toxic. It's not chauvinistic. It's healthy, and it's great for the relationship for a man to lead and to be a dad. And so that was the biggest challenge I had personally.
That's super helpful. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's been one thing, even before children, that's been one thing that's been one of my weaknesses in our relationship from time to time, which is like sometimes I'm deferring too much because I trust her. I really do. I mean, my wife is one of like literally the smartest person I know, like with bar none, the smartest person I know. So I'm like, okay, I don't mind delegating. I'm the best delegator in the world. I mean, the least amount of work I do, I'm happy, right? But then
exactly, yeah.
Within a family setting, then I can understand how that's like, okay, but at some point it's like, okay, like, but sometimes I feel like she needs somebody to lead. Like she needs a little bit of either like, hey, like take this on. Like, why do I have to take everything on, right? And within the context of a kid, that's probably like exponentially greater, like or like multiplied by 10x, because now you have the this gift from the universe that you have to like figure out how to raise.
Yeah.
And if you're like, she's already doing the breastfeeding and she's already doing all this other stuff, and then you're asking her to do additional stuff, then it's like, okay, that's probably not a good idea. So I really appreciate that, because it's something that I'm trying to make a like an actual effort to apply. And it's my insecurity comes in from, and I don't know if any of you guys can talk about this, but sometimes my insecurity comes from, well, I'm not really sure, like, sometimes when to do it, like when to step in, because I don't want to be, I don't know, it's not out of disrespect or anything, but it's just maybe a little bit of hesitancy. So like how do you guys navigate through that sort of challenge?
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
Well, let me give one quick nugget there, and then I'd like Brandon and Justin both to answer kind of both of this line of questioning, get you the twin tuition there. But the point is, you're going to lift the big rocks, and your wife and soon to be child can lift the smaller rocks in the sand, right? So you're going to take the big, scary things that are hard to do because you're built for it, and that way they can focus in there. And it's not greater than or lesser. It's not someone's better than other. We're built for different purposes, right? Like you already alluded to, your wife will have to breastfeed the child. And so you need to be doing something else so that she can do that, right? And so I think we've gotten into this place in our culture where there's this desire to be the same, and we both lose when that is achieved, right? Because then you don't get to be your best traits, your wife doesn't get to be her best traits, and the polarity of the two is actually the beautiful thing about a successful marriage and raising a child together, because the greatest aspects of both of you get to come to full fruition, right? And so when we appreciate that, and it's not lording over your wife, leadership isn't being a tyrant. And there's many things, as you rightly pointed to defer to your wife on. If it's an area of expertise or skill for them, of course you're going to, they're smart, capable women. But in the day-to-day, right, taking those decisions off her plate is just one less thing for her to have to worry about. That's a gift you can give on kind of a daily, consistent basis, and it's just healthy. And anyone who argues against that clearly hasn't had that kind of interaction on a daily basis to benefit from such a supportive relationship. So Justin and Brandon, I know you guys probably have a lot to inject as well. Justin, go ahead.
Sure. So to answer your question, short answer, yes, absolutely step in. And the reason I say that is because I kind of had the same issue and the confidence to just do it. But I've always wanted to be a dad, and it kind of, you're going to realize this the second you hold that child. One, you realize you just became a murderer because you'd kill anybody for that kid. Two, you're also going to realize that you have things in you that you just didn't think you had before. The leadership really starts to come out because you take life so differently, because you're now responsible for another life, And for me personally, my wife's type A. She has everything organized. She read 50 books before we had the child. I was more on cruise control, like, all right, she's got that. I'll take care of, the things I know I can take care of. But I stepped in, especially, so postpartum is something you need to watch for as well. My wife suffered very badly from it, to the point so much that she woke up one day and was just like, I don't want to continue on. And I was like, wow. What? It's scary because you see someone who's so confident and like happy. But anyways, that being said, stepping in was the best thing. Like George said, it's a gift you can continue to give because, even if they don't want you to step in, just be like, hey, look, stop. I've got this. You're the leader. You have to let them know. Go take, 5 minutes, because that's another thing you're going to realize. Kids will stress you out to your absolute max, and you're going to get frustrated. And you're going to be like, I love this little thing so much, but oh my God, it is driving me crazy. So it's good sometimes to take 5 minutes to yourself, get a quiet place, let your spouse, do it. And that's one thing I struggled with was balance. And I still struggle with it because I have 202, but finding balance is going to be the key, and using your strengths. Like I'm good at diapers. I'm good at, not sleeping essentially. She's not, she can't deal with no sleep. So I made sure she got sleep. And that's another piece of advice someone gave us. Always stop and make sure if one partner has the baby, the other sleeps until you kind of get, harmonized. Because if you're both tired, you're both exhausted, you're not doing each other any favors. So it's going to pop in. You're going to be like, wow, these are skills I didn't think I had. Like I thought forever I was going to be like 4 Christmases when I saw a crap diaper and just, Vince Vaughn. But I turned out, I'm like, this doesn't bother me one bit. I've been in ORs. Awesome. Like whatever, I just change crap diapers like it's nothing.
Real
like,
men change poopy diapers.
Oh, I changed 95% of the diapers in my household. My wife loves me for it.
videos of guys like gagging. I'm like, come on, Suck it up.
Yeah.
Stop being a wuss.
No,
Yeah.
doesn't bother. It's
Yeah.
you'll love it. And the other last piece thing, advice that I'll leave you with is those first 6 months to a year, they're the hardest, and it gets better every week and it gets better every day. But stop and enjoy and be present in even the worst moments. So like even at 3:00 in the morning, child screaming, just be there and just be happy about it, because there's a lot of people, A, can't have that, or B, they lose that. You know what I mean? So and that time is fleeting, man. Oh my gosh. I'd give anything to hold my little boy again. And he's just 2, you know, I feel like I want to hold a baby again. So take those moments in, man, because they are so quick to disappear.
Just have another one,
that,
Justin.
Man.
No big. Yeah.
We're actually talking about it. So
Of course you are.
a third.
Nice.
All right, Brandon, take us home, Mr. Unofficial Jordan Peterson.
So I would say there's some really good books that you should read to strengthen your marriage and your relationship between you and your wife, because one, you're a team. It's you and her versus the world, not you versus the world, right? And her. And Dr. Gottman has some really good books, and there's 4 specific things that he talks about that kills a marriage. It's criticism, it's contempt, it's defensiveness, and it's stonewalling. And so when you're in the thick of having a brand new baby and you're stressed, you're sleep deprived, you're both emotionally charged, criticism's really easy, right? At least it was for me. Contempt can be, bitterness can be, defensiveness when one's raising the voice at the other and then shutting the other one out, stonewalling, right? So you've got to be aware of how you are emotionally regulated. And I'll say the last thing would be with leadership, especially servant leadership. The servant part is that you're leading. You're taking the weight off of your wife because your wife feels like the world is on top of her, and you're the one making it that much lighter for her. And yes, you're bearing the weight of it yourself, but that's what a servant leader does. And that allows your wife to be feminine. And I say feminine in the fact of nurturing, loving, kind, focused, like on the child. And you're like the logistics coordinator extraordinaire, right? So if you focus on those things, I feel like you would have a really strong start. And just, continue to solidify your relationship between you and your wife, regardless of the kid being on the way.
Yeah. This is extremely helpful stuff from you guys. I really appreciate y'all, honestly sharing this information. And it hits different when it comes from men, and that's one thing that I didn't really expect to feel. I feel like this means a lot, it's because it comes, I can tell from every single one of you that's speaking, it comes from experience, and it comes from a very deep down place that you have felt some very strong emotions from, so it's I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that. This is extremely helpful. This is by far the most helpful thing about parenting I've experienced so far.
Really?
It's not even close.
You've now graduated from the School of Present Fathers. Congratulations.
Yes.
Welcome to the Present Fathers podcast.
When can I get my star?
That's actually
You can fill in for me every now and again.
Yeah, jump in. I love it.
You actually raised a great point, Farzad, is look now to find other dads who are going to be in very similar seasons to have a little bit of a close community. Because there's something to just being able to go vent with another guy who's in a similar situation. It just loses all its power. You go and you vent for 15 minutes and they're like, you feel better now? And you're like, yeah, man, I do. Yeah. Like, all right, let's go get coffee or something. And then there's just something about the catharsis of doing that with other men specifically that lets you show up as the best version of yourself when you get back home to the family. And that's something I learned way too late in my experience. I'm a big tough guy. I can handle it by myself. That is the losing attitude. That is the quickest way to get stressed out and start blowing up on your family and all kinds of stuff. So, what you're experiencing right now, this can be a frequent thing. It's not like we're special people. It's just the fact that you're connecting with guys with similar interests and passions and similar seasons.
And that brings up a really, really good point too. So George is right. You need a tribe, but you need your wife to have one as well. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the one thing that I know every father has if they have a wife is they have a wife who loses their identity and does not know where they want to be or what they want in life. That first child is the hardest because they've just grown into somebody they've never experienced being before, and they feel so lost. And if you've ever felt lost, you know how that can lead to depression, anxiety, sleeplessness. So make sure you have your wife finding her identity, finding things on a daily basis that she truly appreciates, and that she has a little time to herself, whether that's like a daily devotion in the morning with coffee or go to the gym, whatever the case may be. Make sure she has that as well, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if she fails, you fail.
Yeah, no, that I really appreciate that. What's funny about all of this is that this is where I'm extremely lucky. So one of my really close friends out here in the Austin area, this is hilarious. So our baby's due May 25th. Theirs is due June 4th. Yeah. So it's like, and it wasn't even, it wasn't like we had a handshake. It's like, Mike, don't pull out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't even like a handshake deal. It just kind of happened.
The couch
and we're both
out,
pretty close. Yeah. And then, it's already helping me, because it's so funny you bring this up, because now, we go out to so my wife and his wife, who are very, very close friends, and that's how we met. They hang out, every couple of weeks, and they're always texting, about like what they're going through, and they're literally basically on the same schedule. And then Mike and I will, his name's Mike, we'll go to one of the local places, once every month or every few weeks, and then we'll throw back some beers, and we're just like talking about what's happening. And the conversation always ends up, we're slurring our words at some point. I love you, man. I'm so happy we're going through this together. This is freaking awesome. And like, that's where, like, this forum is incredibly helpful. And it's like, hearing you guys say that reinforces just how fortunate I am to be where I'm at with my life, with the fact that I can lean on a friend, have you guys lean on you guys for advice. And it just like, I welcome all of it, because I'm taking this thing so seriously that I feel like I can't. Okay, let me ask you this question. Is there such a thing as taking in too much information?
Yes.
Okay.
So 100%. that was, every kid is different. You're going to be different. Your wife's going to be different. So there's going to be a lot of like, hey, do this or do that. It may work great for one kid, and it's not going to work for another one. So I would say, with some of the higher philosophical things, soak it all in, right? Especially when it comes to like your personal growth as a dad.
Yeah.
And I'll kick it over to Brandon and the other guys for this too. But, your child may have different things that work or don't work. And you just need to be attentive to that. And so, not all advice is going to be good advice, because it may work for another kid and not yours. And you just need to find a rhythm that works for your family. And if it's working, it doesn't matter what someone else thinks. Like you were saying earlier, right? You had to kind of realize like, hey, I can just be me, and some people aren't going to like that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Even more so in your role as a father. When it comes to your family, if you believe in your heart you're doing the best possible thing or the best possible schedule or whatever it is for your family, then, you got to kind of filter out some advice there, and it's your family that you're responsible for, not them, right? So you have more at stake.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of bad advice out there from in-laws, from people, and they're going to tell you, oh, this worked for me, you need to do that. And it'll be cloaked and disguised as good advice. And you really have to filter it very well. It's like social media, right? Probably 9 out of 10 people that make comments, you're like, what is he talking about? So it's going to be
what
the
are
same.
you talking about? What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. You can trust everything
on the internet was true.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, be ready to get that filter, and expect some bad advice, because it's going to come, and it's your job to ignore it and to keeps on the right direction.
And I think that's where having a very strong understanding of who you are and what your core values are and what your worldview is so important, because then you don't know what to filter unless you know that. I feel like that's probably
100%.
Yeah.
And that that's true not even with just a newborn. That's,
anything really.
As a man, you need to have principles that you believe and stand for. Otherwise, you'll fall for anything, right?
Yeah.
And boundaries.
Makes sense.
Boundaries are something you're going to learn to have to set too, because there's going to be people that you're not going to want near your baby at the first 6 months till they get all their shots. You don't want a certain group or individual near their kid, and they're not going to respect that. And they're going to get in the baby's face, and you're going to be like, I've asked you, don't kiss the baby on the mouth.
Right.
Like, so those are things that you're going to learn, because that's something my wife and I ran into. Like, we were during the height of COVID, we had a baby and everything was going kind of nuts. And we're like, look, don't get in the baby's face. And we had some friends that were like, testing those boundaries. We straight had to shut them down. And it's just something you're going to have to learn. You gotta learn the boundaries a little bit, because people are going to test them, especially with your kids. And you're going to be fiercely protective of that child. Just wait. I promise you.
It's funny because that already rings kind of true with me with some stuff, because we've already had to set some boundaries for what to even expect when because we're like, hey, like there's a certain thing that we want when the kid is first here, like we don't want the entire house to be flooded with everybody. We just want it to be very controlled, and then a few weeks later we start letting people in. That's just what we want, and sort of setting those expectations. And that's been it was challenging at first, because it's very difficult to tell somebody you really care about. It's like, hey, maybe you got to wait a little longer, and then they're like, but it's a good test, because it sounds like you're gonna have to be doing that a lot. And so probably better to start now, so that you kind of know what it feels like, and then get into a group. But it's funny, like when you say those things, it's like, again, it's sort of ties back to that guiding principle of like, if it feels uncomfortable but it's right, like just lean into it and just learn from it. Let that strengthen you and let that sharpen you, and then you can continue on that path, so that anytime you feel that challenge, you can go through it a little bit easier, and then you can pass on that knowledge to somebody else. So
yep,
this is great.
Yeah, I would say the final note before I ask you a question to kind of shift gears here is, just focus on improving yourself daily. A growth mindset for yourself allows you to be adaptable for when change occurs, because it will occur. And it's also going to help you be prepared for the shift from being the selfish human being that we all are, that immediately changes when we become a father. And, one of the things I would say that I had to learn the hard way was, as a father, being a provider and a protector, one of the things that you have to do is look outward. So you have to plan for the unexpected. You have to protect from the unexpected, like they were saying. And so just work on yourself, man. You grow yourself as a leader, as a man, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those things. It's just going to be sharpening the tools that you use for everything. Okay, whether it's being a father or a good husband. So that would be what I would say.
Hey, B, one quick last thing.
Sure.
You're going to make mistakes, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you got to give yourself some grace too, because you've never done it before. You're absolutely going to make mistakes, and you're going to continue to make them throughout this whole journey. But that's where the growth comes in. It's the awareness of it. Hey, I messed that up. I need to do that better next time. Do I need accountability for that? Do I need to read something for it? That is what makes a great father versus just someone who gets by. Is when you make the mistake, what do you do with it? And you're gonna make them. Give yourself some grace, and that's where like the whole brotherhood thing comes into play, because you can talk about it, and then be like, "Hey, brother, me too." So
that's awesome. Well, I'm the king of making mistakes, so I got that covered.
And you're gonna learn a lot real quick.
Heck yeah!
All right, Brandon. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, talking about looking ahead, what are you most excited about becoming a father?
Dude, just like honestly, this probably sounds dumb. I just want to know what it looks like. Like, I just want to see him, like,
it's not dumb.
Look at what we've created.
I remember feeling that way. That's
Man,
awesome.
That's definitely like the immediate thing I'm looking forward to. I'm so curious to see what this little guy's going to look like. I think for me, I enjoy challenging things. I definitely enjoy challenging things, and in my head, it doesn't really matter how much I'm telling myself this is going to be hard. It's probably going to be 10 times harder than I think. So I am mentally
happy.
I'm mentally preparing myself for 100 times worse, right? So it's like, okay, but I think for me, it's like I just really want to see. I want to see how this changes my wife and I's relationship for the better too. That's another thing that I'm very excited about. We've been very lucky to have a life where we've navigated through some very challenging things together. I mean, we had a business together. You know, when I worked at Tesla, I was working 80-hour weeks while we had that freaking business at the same time. You know, we've both had to, you know, do things that, you know, will keep it between myself and her, but they've been challenging things. And every time we've gone through those, it's been such a beautiful experience, because we come out on the other side and we reflect and we're like, man, like how amazing was it that we went through that together and we figured it out, you know? So that's another thing that I'm really looking forward to, is strengthening the bond with my wife. And then, and just really, you know, one of the things that I struggle with, and I know this is going to be a struggle for me, but what I'm looking forward to is really making sure that I practice being present, because that's one of my weaknesses, is that I know that I'm not as present as I should be, and I'm especially since my wife got pregnant, I've been able to practice that a little bit more. I've gotten a little bit better, but my default, you know, brain space is like, well, I'm thinking about something and I'm somewhere else. You know, I think that's just a dude thing. You know, it's like we're constantly problem solving in our heads, right? Just constant problem solve. I think I take that to a level that's unhealthy, to be completely honest. And so, you know, that comes with benefits, with strengths, but it also, the huge weakness is that you kind of forget you exist, you know, and there's the thing that's happening in front of you. So I am excited to sit down and really practice being present, because I think, you know, not that there should be a child as an excuse to be present, because, you know, being present with my wife is also extremely valuable and it's something that I should be doing every day. But I really am looking forward to just experiencing being a father, and feeling everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, the challenging, the, you know, the difficult. And I want to accept it all. My heart is wide open, y'all. It's ready for it, you know? So yeah. And as I go through it, I'm sure there'll be other things that I get excited about. You know, I'm not so far into the, you know, like, oh, I'm curious to see what he's going to be like when he's a teenager, and, you know, curious to see what he's going to be like when he's older, you know, what kind of career path he's going to take. Is he going to be an athlete? Are we going to put him in sports and stuff like that? I just want to hold him. I just want to hold him and see where it goes.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, man, you like challenges, you're going to love kids, because they're the biggest challenge you'll ever have, but they're going to get you to the point of feeling like you are an absolute failure, because you're just going to be failing so much at so many things and losing tempers and doing things that you're like, man, I should have done that, you know? But it is so worth it in that one moment. And you're going to know these moments when they happen, like your kid's first smile, their first laugh, the first time they look at you and they look at you and say, I love you with the look, or they touch your face. Oh God, man. I'm telling you, dude, like Subaru commercials make me cry now. I'm a big pansy now. My kid's gonna be a soft man. 100%. And I don't care. And you're gonna love, you know, all the things they love. You're gonna think, you're gonna, at first, you know, before kids, you can be like, oh, that looks stupid. But then your kids come around, you're like, oh, that's so cool, you know?
You're going to learn every word to Winnie the Pooh and all that kind of stuff.
Bluey's where it's at, man.
I think Dustin's got a question for you.
Yeah, so the science behind that is really interesting. This experience we were all having, your brain has been rewired by your child and your wife. So the fMRI studies are really cool on it. They've looked at the structure of men's brains, and it changes around the 3 to 6 month mark of their wife being pregnant. So we've always known that women have hormonal changes, oxytocin surges, the amygdala, the fear center increases in size, but only recently have we learned that men's brains change as well. So the hormones in your body, the cuddle hormone specifically, has surged to 3 times its normal level.
I feel it.
Yeah. These feelings you're having of, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, all this, that is all natural. It was designed that way. So, and it'll be like that for probably about 6 months. Your testosterone levels, if you had them tested right now, are critically low. And
they're about to drop to a place where I don't want it to go yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's okay. I mean, when you think about it, think about our caveman ancestors that were angry when the baby woke them up, but their T was low enough that they didn't kill the kid. So I mean, it's a safety thing. We were built that way for a reason.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, but recognize that when you're crying at that Subaru commercial, you're not alone. We all go through that as men.
Well, you're saying I should be getting a TRT injection is when I see that commercial. if I'm crying.
Please don't.
No kidding.
For the safety of, exactly. For the safety of your child here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's
that makes perfect sense. I mean, like that's something that I'm fascinated by is like, we've been around for so long. Like there has to be something that we've picked up along the way that either, through evolution or whatever, where, we've become a better version of the thing that's going to ensure that the kid survives for a long time. And having the man, become less likely to kill stuff makes sense, because then you're ensuring that, the wife and the child are going to be also safe. But at the same time, you still are protective and you want to make sure that, you're keeping everybody around and healthy. So yeah, that's I felt it. I've become a lot more, soft in a way, like a little bit more like tender. And I'm not ashamed to say it because it's like, I like it. I like feeling this way. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I think a younger version would be like, "Oh, you're being a bitch," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I love it. It's such a beautiful feeling. It feels beautiful.
Yeah.
Like getting emotional thinking about holding my son for the first time. Like, why? That's amazing. That's
and it's
amazing.
an incredibly masculine thing as well.
Yes.
One of George's favorite books is called Tender Warrior. I mean, that's an important side of masculinity.
Write that down.
Yeah, if you get a chance, top 10 book right there. Tender Warrior by Stu. What's his last name? George?
Stu Weber.
Stu Weber.
Weber. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'll send you all my stuff on that. But he talks about the 4 pillars of manhood, of authentic manhood, and the last one is lover, and it's that beating heart that you're describing right now, that fierce feeling you have for your child. That's what motivates all of it, right? All the aggression, all the power, all the leadership, all that kind of, those tough, manly things we think about. It's tempered by this compassion, this empathy, this love. And when you're all of those things together, you become the best version of what a man should be. And if you think about all the great people that you've known in your life, they probably showed all of those characters.
Yeah.
The great men you've known personally, right? Maybe they're amazing leaders, but they also know everyone by name. They know about, what sports they like or what their favorite meal is and that kind of stuff. It's this kind of, yin and yang type of thing there where we're expected to be a lot of things. And naturally, we kind of gravitate towards one or the other. And so it's kind of building that comprehensiveness that's such an amazing experience. And honestly, I think being a father really helps men unlock that last pillar to a level that you never would be able to without it. So far to the point that I actually personally get I question men who are in like leadership positions who don't have kids, because I think that their ability to lead is actually a little bit limited because they have not had that feeling, that experience that you've been describing unlocked in them, and then being able to apply that to other people. There's just something that transforms within you. It's an amazing thing. That's
a fascinating point you're making there. And I think so would you describe it as just being significantly more empathetic? Do you think that's part of it too? It's like you're just more in tune with people's just being and emotions and sort of like how they feel and stuff like that, and like seeing things from their perspective. I think that makes so much sense. Like now I wish I had a kid when I was a leader. I mean, I'm definitely proud of what I've done, but it's like, it makes so much sense that it would be such a powerful tool for that too. Not you should have a kid just to be a better leader, but it's so fascinating that they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, you should definitely do the things for the right reasons, but I think
of course
it unlocked, like for me, I was active duty. I'm in the National Guard now. I became a company commander after I had children. And I think I was 10 times the commander I would have been if I would have never had a child, because especially when it came to difficult situations like interpersonal things, I had a lot more patience and understanding to actually get to like the heart of the issue, as opposed to just, well, I'm in charge, so do what I say, right? There's a level of growth that occurs within you. But I know Brandon, our podcast philosopher, has some great input probably to this topic, so I'm going to kick it to him.
Yeah,
man. Yes. So, okay. A truly masculine, dangerous man is the quiet poet who's capable of danger. There's a couple books that talk about this, like The Tender Warrior by Stu Weber. There's The Warrior Poet by John Lovell. And one of the things that they talk about is that you learn to kill your ego. You learn to be a man of humility. a man of tempered strength. So you are capable of being very dangerous, but you are very tempered, and you don't allow people to see that side. And most especially, what it does when you have kids is it hones that ability. So your kids will never see the dangerous side of you unless you're protecting them, right? But they'll always see that soft, loving, empathetic, compassionate side of you. And so what being a father does is it hones that side, and then you use that when you're out in the world. Because if you've got a guy that you see it all the time, they've got the knockout UFC t-shirts, bunch of tats, and they think they're the most dangerous guy in the world. And it's like, there's guys that practice jujitsu and that are sharp in the mind and can outsmart those guys, and they're super deadly, like Navy SEALs, Green Berets, whatever, and they're dead quiet, and they are always watching the room, and they're not bragging, and they're humble. Yeah. And those are the truly dangerous men in this world. And so being empathetic hones that. And I think a truly masculine man has both sides of that. He's very balanced, both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
Brandon, I don't appreciate you making fun of my cool tap out shirt.
That thing still exists.
Dustin had wings on the back of his shirt.
Like 2009.
Dustin had the wings. He was like,
yeah, 2009 called it. Wants its shirt back.
No, Brandon. So Brandon's 100% right, because I'm telling you right now, I joked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm not joking. Like, you are gonna find that when you have a child to protect that you love so deeply, because I've said this before on our podcast, this is the first human being you're ever going to have an unconditional love with, where you have zero walls, because you go into this relationship with no trust issues, no previous traumas that are going to affect it. It's literally fresh and fresh love and love. It is literally the most pure love you're ever going to experience. And you will protect that with everything you have. So like before a child, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this situation, whatever, it is what it is. But if it's against your child, man, I'm going to tell you what, you'll rip someone's head off, not think twice about it. I'm just saying, like, you're going to feel those things, because I promise you, your kid is worth your own life. And that's something that you don't feel until you experience that.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. It's funny listening to Brandon describe that, what masculinity really, how it's defined. And I posed this stuck out to me, because I don't remember what we saw, but it was something on, my wife and I were watching something. I forget what it was, but basically it was like one of these dudes that was like, very show offy, like kind of like what you described. And I was like, because I never, sometimes I ask my wife the most random questions, because I'm just like, I'm sure everybody does it. It's like, I'm just like wondering, but like, I don't think I ever asked my wife what she thinks masculinity is. Right. And I'm like when you see that, does that look masculine? It's like, no, that looks like he is insecure. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, how do you define masculinity? And she said something very, very similar to what you said. She's like, somebody who's very strong, who doesn't have to use it. Somebody who has a lot of strength, who doesn't have to use it. And I'm like, okay, I never viewed it in that way, because in my head, from how I was, growing up and who I was around, masculine is like, quote unquote alpha male, which is the guy that seems like he's an alpha, like he's always showing all this stuff. And in my head, I'm like, okay, like what does that even mean? I didn't even know what to make of it, because then I'm like thinking about myself, okay, I'm a man, but like, am I alpha? And if I'm not alpha, am I automatically beta? Like, am I just like is no one going to want me kind of thing? And then like, it's so fascinating you bring that up, because it's kind of like, it makes so much sense. Because, now that when she told me that, I started to like make a considered effort to like try and figure out how men carried themselves in places. Just something that I don't know why, but I'm like, wow, I can pick it up a lot more. I can sort of pick out when somebody's like going out of their way to appear masculine, to men that just are masculine. Like, you don't even have to try to be masculine. You just are, right. And it's like, that's fascinating. It's so interesting how having a child can like activate those things. I mean, it makes so much sense. My God, it makes so much sense. But it's like, it's such a mind-blowing thing to like think through now, because I haven't felt those feelings deeply yet, but it's almost like y'all are telling me like, just wait until just wait. It's coming.
You can certainly start. It sounds like you've done a lot of self-study already. And you
tried.
should.
Yeah.
But what your personal journey is not unique. That's the problem. Is most men our age and younger, we're not taught what a man is, like truly.
Yeah.
Very select. I think a very small percentage of our generation actually knows when they turn like 18 what it means to be a man. We don't
have
do
a
rites
false
of passage.
impression of it, I feel like.
Yeah, I think we have a very diluted, one-dimensional sense of what a man is, and it's be Arnold Schwarzenegger in an action movie, right?
Yeah.
Or you F the prom queen type of thing. It's like, okay, great, that's
being
a
a guy with no emotional intelligence.
I just dated myself by that reference, but anyway, that's why I'm starting over the shoulder. That right there is built around teaching what authentic manhood is, and unfortunately, our society, our modern society, sucks at it.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient cultures were amazing at it. Like you can look back at. There's a great book actually called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. He kind of goes into that. It's a pretty interesting, quick read. But how can cultures that can't even have electricity have manhood mastered? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we're missing something in our. So there's some really interesting things to unpack in the way we live our modern lives. And so that's something for you. You're gonna have a son. And Dustin has really gone down this rabbit hole about like incorporating rites of passage in his experience raising from boyhood to manhood and how important that is. And think about yourself. Did you have any rites of passage? Like when did you know I'm a man now? You probably didn't, right? You're just like, oh, I guess I've got a job and I've had
Depending
sex.
on who you talk, they don't even know what a man is.
I guess I'm a man now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
How pathetic. Like we all missed out, like we we didn't have that moment where we were like, okay, I still have mountains to learn, but I know now, the people who matter to me now recognize me as a man. Like that is something that's primally built into us, and to deny that is, we have the culture we have today because we've denied this. We have cut it from our experience. So, I think it's good that you're aware of this now because you can start future casting for your boy to do better for him,
Yeah, for sure. I think what's really interesting about that is like, I think the reason why I'm fortunate to have thought about some of that stuff, is that because I had the time to sit down and think about those things. Whereas I think a lot of men either, they start without having the true guidance, right? And then the example that you gave, which is so brilliant, is like, men back in, 500,000, 10,000 years ago, they seem to figure out what masculinity is. But why is that? Because they had the time to sit down and figure out what masculinity is, because then they have this stupid freaking thing in front of their phone, the face, telling them what masculinity is, right?
Yeah.
Well, like which is optimized to make our dopamine go through the roof and to make them money, right? And I feel like a lot of the masculine culture is like tied to that dynamic. And so it's so crazy how important time and self-reflection is, I feel like, to really gain on an understanding and a solid footing of what's really required to be good at anything, let alone parenting,
Yeah. And I here's the quote that's going to get you. Go external for possible dangers, not validation. That's where our society is missing. So they are going outside for the validation externally instead of looking inward. And instead, they should be looking externally for lessons to be learned and lessons of like what's dangerous outside, because your validation should not come from anybody else. Period.
Yeah. I love that. He really is a philosopher, this guy. Freaking Brandon's a beast. My God.
He really
is,
is.
man.
We're so lucky to have him.
Bro,
I think if you
give him
put
like a
me,
statue
Justin,
or
and
something,
Dustin
like those
together,
Greek
our
people.
brains still are behind Brandon. He's like up here in some other dimension somehow. I don't know.
I love it.
He was dropped on his head a few times. Justin got all the love and care, and Brandon.
I'm the dumb pretty
unlocked
twin.
some secrets.
I think, but I think this is what I mean. Not just Brandon, but all of you guys have dropped so much. Like it's almost like feels like parenting, being a father, being a mother. There's a lot of philosophy to it. It's like such a deep experience. It is so human. It's so. I mean, it sounds that way. I'm not even a freaking dad, and I feel like it's a very deep philosophical experience, And I'm just so excited. I'm a huge philosophy. I can, wax philosophical with my friends at freaking, 3 a.m. in the morning with way too much bourbon. And we think we got it all figured out. Like, we're like, dude, we got this all. We've got it all figured out. And then next morning, we're like, what are we talking about?
You gotta record yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, if that stuff makes it on the internet, boy.
Nah, just like voice memos.
No,
voice
I know.
to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that stuff.
It's awesome. So we were talking about external threats from Brandon. Let's talk about robots. Speaking of potential external threats.
Yeah, right.
So Farzad, your brand is the robots are coming, right? You got a t-shirt line, all that kind of stuff. Talk to me about what makes you so excited about robots and what is going to change about our lives and what's going to be, okay, so we're in our 30s. I'm in my 40s. We had a life where we had a lot of manual labor. We did a lot of those things. What is your son's life going to be like that's very different when he's 30 than what your life was like when he was 30?
That is a question that I struggle with on the daily. Yeah, so the robots are coming it was more like a thing that I was like, because I spent so much time thinking about AI automation, the whole thing with the advent of self-driving technology is like the beginning of like where we're going with artificial intelligence. It's like it's automating everything, not just physical but digital. And so the robots are coming was like a thing where in my head is like, I don't know if this is good or bad. It's just happening, right? The robots are coming. Like in my head, it was a very neutral statement. The robots are coming. Like, but it's like, it was more the artistic artsy intent behind it was to invoke an emotion from whoever reads that to be like either be excited or very depressed by it or scared by it, right? Because it's so different depending on how someone is viewing that technology in the future. Like if I use artificial intelligence as an example right now, which is it's a form of automation, but it's like a digital robot is the way I think about it. It's, you look at it, you're like, okay, it can literally probably do basically anything in the digital world in the next 10-20 years. We've all seen ChatGPT 4. We've seen, some of the basic stuff that I can do, but it's basically a lawyer and a copywriter and a newscaster and all these things at once at a level that's like better than the average human across many different studies, right? It's not the best human at all those things, but it's better than the average human at almost anything that it can ingest, right? So then you extrapolate that further. You're like, okay, so what is that going to look like in 5 years once the hardware is ramped up, all the compute power is ramped up to be able to make that artificial intelligence better? And then you think about, okay, what happens when you take that and you put it within the context of a human or robot that can do tasks in the physical world, not just the digital world? So what does that mean for the labor market, right? So ChatGPT like softwares over the course of the next few years will replace a lot of the human labor we're doing, but then the question becomes, what will humans find to fill that space with, right? And so the way I think about the next 30 years is there's this hierarchy of human needs. I forget what the hell this thing is called. Oh my
Maslow's,
God.
Right? Maslow?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly.
Starts with like shelter and food and gets to self-actualization.
You got it. So the bottom is physiological needs. It's air, water, blah, blah, blah. It's just the most basic stuff. Then it's safety. So it's like making sure that you have a place where no one's going to kill you, right? Even things like financial safety, like employment, and making sure that you have safety from that perspective, right? And so, as technology has kind of almost solved the physiological needs, especially in the Western nations, right? Like us five here, we don't really have to worry too much about like water, food, I mean, relatively speaking, we don't really have to worry about that.
Our infrastructure is robust enough that, an earthquake doesn't shut the whole grid down for the whole country like it does in other places of the world.
Exactly.
Like so California. I'm so glad we don't live there.
Like California. Now we're working on the safety one. right? Not now as a people, some nations and worlds are behind others, but like now we're working on the safety one. And the safety one is the one where artificial intelligence through its abilities and whatever you want to call it can get us to a point where like I use myself as a perfect example for this, right? The safety stuff. Okay. I have a YouTube channel that generates enough income for me to never have to worry about anything. Okay. Plus the foundation that I had. I couldn't do that 20 years ago. I just couldn't do it. The internet wasn't really like you couldn't sit down in front of a camera and have a show like this, right? Whereas now my studio probably spent a couple grand on it, and I have a DSLR camera, I got lights, I got a microphone, I have the internet, I have a computer, and all those things were technological improvements that happened on the last 20 years. Technology allowed me to get here. Now take all that and move it forward 30 years from now, right? And apply to way more people, right? So in my head, I'm like, okay, so the physiological is met, the safety is being met, right? And then we're going to get into the love and belonging. Then we're going to get into the esteem and the self-actualization and stuff like that. So it's like when I think about the world in 30 years, it's probably going to be more geared to those top three things versus the safety and the physiological needs. I just don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, right? But what I do know is that love and empathy are going to be very important variables to have as a human being to be quote unquote successful in the world, just being a good person. And so I find a lot of peace in that because it kind of takes away the worry of I'm concerned about what my child's going to do in a world where artificial intelligence and robots are going to be, versus like, if you think about what is the economy and what is the world, it's just humans making the world what we want it to be, right? Like, does a dog walker job exist 1,000 years ago? Right? Does a YouTuber exist 1,000 years ago? Does a laundromat exist 1,000 years ago? Does a gas station exist 1,000 years ago? Right? So then you just move the time forward and you kind of think about that. So, love and empathy and being a good person, I think, is just how I'm viewing setting up my kid for the best possible outcomes 30 years from now, regardless of what happens.
That's such a great point. I honestly think in 30 years, emotional intelligence will be the most important skill, more so than being a good mechanic or being good at coding or any of that kind of stuff. So that's such a great point that if you can teach your son emotional intelligence, he will be more successful than a lot of people, because with all the distraction and all the confusion in our culture, it's very hard to have good emotional intelligence. So if you can teach your son that, he's going to be a happy kid. That's awesome. Justin, I know you had something to say.
No, hang on. Brandon, you got to say the joke. If we have to, I'll cut this, but you got to say it.
Okay,
you have to say it.
The one thing that did exist, but it was analog, was OnlyFans.
It's true. It's true.
The oldest profession.
The oldest profession, yeah.
OnlyFans is undefeated, bro. Undefeated.
He typed that in the private chat. And he was sitting over there making the face, trying to hold it in.
I'm like, what's this smirks?
You got to say that, dude. You got to let that one out.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's true.
Now, Justin.
Yeah, so we've been talking about emotions and philosophical skills. Do you think in our lifetime our kids are going to see AI as philosophers or even personalities, kind of like Elvis or Michael Jackson was for us?
Oh, I mean, I struggle to think what AI will be even 10 years from now, because the rate of improvement of it is so insane. If you're in the year 2000 and you're thinking about the dot-com bubble that happened, right? And basically 95% of e-commerce companies just disappeared. You're thinking about, okay, the internet at that point, what is it going to be in 2024? It's going to be this brain for humanity that allows us to have a thing in our pocket where we can just do 3 movements with our fingers, and then we can get literally anything we want at our doorstep. It just shows up, right? Which means that now you have communities where you don't even have to leave your house. The things come to you. You don't go to the things. That's been like a human thing forever. We go to the thing. Now it's like the thing comes to us. That's what the internet has allowed. That was the internet. You know what I'm saying? So what will AI be 10, 20 years from now? I think, I do think there will be like unique things that artificial intelligence will do from like an entertainment perspective, you know? But to me, I think it's just going to be a tool that's going to allow us to, hopefully, this is the benign positive scenario, to allow us to become exactly who we want to be, whatever that means. I'm hoping what it does is it enables more people to be to like, I think one of the very positive things about it is that it will have the ability to make everybody a small business owner in some way, you know? Because in a world where most physical and digital jobs that we think about today are quote unquote replaced or done by artificial intelligence, imagine the kind of bandwidth that opens up for people, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where people will start to figure out, oh, I find this valuable now. I find that valuable now. You know, I find this valuable now.
Innovators will come out of the woodwork.
What's that?
I said innovators will come out of the woodwork as well because you'll have so much more time.
Exactly. And this is where I get very, very excited about this, is that it will also be done in places that typically wouldn't have access to be innovators. So like, what's one of the beautiful things about the internet and like, you know, Starlink and these second and third world countries that are starting to get access to the internet, those people will have access to artificial intelligence as well. And those people have had lives and experiences that are so vastly different from ours that they will be able to build things using artificial intelligence that the entire world can benefit from. And our AI doesn't exist without the internet. So it's like, dude, I don't even know. Like, this is the scary part. I don't even know. But I feel like if humans are good, which I believe they are, I think it's going to be a very positive future. It just can't be reserved for the few. And that's where I get really, really scared.
I don't know.
The few will have the power.
COVID's kind of proved that humans are not good. If we're being completely honest. And the one thing I wanted to ask real quick before we kick it over to Dustin was, have you seen or read or heard of any of Dr. Michio Kaku's
some
information on quantum computing and like what's capable in just the next 10 years? Like,
I know.
It's so incredibly scary if you just go and listen. I think he did an episode with Joe Rogan on his podcast that just, I didn't even know things existed that he was talking about. And if that, you know, they talk about AI is the new internet. Well, like you said, without the internet, AI is useless, essentially.
Exactly.
But quantum computing is like essentially a whole nother level. And I'm curious, like, is that if they melded the two together, what's going to happen? You
exactly.
know, 30 years. Who says 30 years isn't going to be like 100 years time with quantum computing? You know?
Exactly. AI might be the thing that gets us to quantum computing, because it's going to know how to do stuff better than we can. It just will. It just will.
So one of the thought exercises that I had with AI, because I'm kind of a tech nerd myself, was, you know, we're prompting GPT right now, right? And it's got a certain amount of knowledge database, but it's thinking about that data in a perfect way that human beings cannot. Mm-hmm. So eventually it's going to be strong enough and have, I guess, high enough IQ that we could go through it and prompt, say, one specific subject, like drawing energy from a magnetic source for free. Like, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And then you can just prompt it saying, based off of all the history of man that we know in science, find what we missed.
Yeah.
And it's going to find it. Right? You know, like, I mean, it's crazy, the possibilities. And then you've got human augmentation being a possibility, you know, robotic augmentation. You're seeing that with Neuralink. It's the very first step, you know, and it's crazy to think about how much it's going to be significantly changed. Because if we think about how much the internet changed the world, and now we're thinking about how this is going to, you know, do that in such a more exponential way, it's amazing and wonderful.
That's so fascinating you say that, because it's one of the things that's freaking me out with artificial intelligence goes along exactly what you just said. Is like, I'm trying to conceptualize what is AI's the maximum potential of artificial intelligence, right? And so I'm trying to think, okay, So the universe is, depending on what you believe, if you're religious or not, but let's just, however your worldview is, just conceptualize the maximum amount of intelligence. It's just the universe, like everything that exists. Okay. Everything that exists, that is the perfection that it exists in, that's maximum intelligence. It's like total understanding of everything. Okay. So that's maximum. To me, it feels like humans are at like 0.000000001. Okay. So 0.1 of the universe will feel like the most giant God we've ever perceived. But that God is still 0.1 of God. Right. And that's where I get, like, that's where I stop being able to conceptualize artificial intelligence. Because what is the limiting factor for artificial intelligence to get to the universe? It's just more chips, bro. Just more chips. Just make more chips. And when the artificial intelligence is smart enough to make chips better, it's just going to make more chips better at a faster rate than it was able to do it 10 years ago. And then it's going to be able to do it again and again and again and again. And that's where it gets really weird. It gets really weird. Like, I don't know how to conceptualize maximum AI.
Yeah.
And if you
that's a
think
really good analogy that like had a moment there.
And you want to go further down that rabbit hole, those processors and chips are only thinking at a certain thought per minute. And if you do quantum computing, you're talking about billions of thoughts per minute.
Boom.
I mean,
what about the thing after quantum computing?
Yeah, it's crazy. So you were tying AI's kind of revolution to the hierarchy of needs. And when you talk about safety, that's where my like, hey, I can see this going very badly type of thing comes into play. Because, and just hear me out, it's going to start with like, well, hey, this is objectively, statistically, doing this is going to save this many lives this year in this country because, cars won't crash into each other or whatever, right? That's an example. Where's that going to stop? Because, my head jumps to like Minority Report, where 100%. It's like we're predetermining whether or not someone's guilty or not because of like an algorithm that decided that, oh, well, this guy, because of these factors, is going to commit a crime when he's 47 years old or something. And I'm like, how do we rein that in? Where do we stop that? And like, we've seen this play out, and this is why I'm concerned a little bit, is with our laws here in America, right? The way that they get passed is so far behind technology. Like, we can't go arrest sex traffickers in the United States because of the difference between like this state and that state and whose jurisdiction is it and stuff like that. So, that creates a very interesting set of problems, and I can see that spiraling out of control. You're a lot more, versed on this. Have you thought about that? What are some counters to that? Maybe I'm just seeing this very one-dimensional.
No, I think you're 1,000% correct. And this is where it's, sounds like y'all are, I'm gonna use a Bitcoin analogy, believe it or not. This is very tech bro. So how familiar are you guys with Bitcoin?
Very familiar.
Very familiar.
Kind of? Okay.
Dustin's the maxi.
Okay, sweet.
I like it too.
Okay.
That's all, yeah.
Okay. So if you look at Bitcoin from its existence to now, it's the only cryptocurrency that has survived all the crap, right? All the it's fake, or to the point now that the SEC has approved an ETF to actually trade Bitcoin in the United States, which that to me is a sign that says, okay, this is a legitimate thing that exists. Okay, but why does Bitcoin work? It's because it's a thing that was donated to humanity that exists like oxygen or water, right? That's the key thing there. It's not controlled by a single entity. It just exists like water and oxygen and the earth. It just exists, right? Kind of like the internet. The internet kind of exists, but you have to pay a fee to get access to the internet. That's what an ISP is. But the internet is like a collection of humanity's network to tie to each other. Like that's just exists by the function of us having computers and being connected to each other through pipes on the ground or through satellites in the sky. So I think the only way artificial intelligence has a bright future is if it's done in the same way that it just exists. It just exists for humanity to have equal access to it. Because then if you do that, humanity's will dictate what artificial intelligence is, right? Whereas the opposite is, and this is where I get really scared right now, you have three entities, basically, 4-ish, but you have Microsoft, OpenAI, or closed AI, whatever you want to call it. So you have
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you got Mr. Sam Altman. That's one god. Sam Altman is one god. Then you have Google with Gemini. That's another god. And then you have
Burn it with
Elon
fire.
Musk and XAI. Yeah, burn it with fire. And then you have Elon Musk and with XAI and Tesla. That's your other god. So you have three gods right now, right? And these three gods are trying to soak up all the resources available to them to make their god be God, right? But the outcome is that at some point, one god will win, because once artificial intelligence reaches like escape velocity, that artificial intelligence is going to be the winner, because it will get to a point where it's just better than everybody else's. So it becomes the winner. If that technology doesn't get donated to humanity, at some point, that technology is going to fall in the hands of the wrong person. And when the wrong person has infinite power, so that's how I view it. I think it needs to exist. It just needs to exist.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Farzad. And when Elon today decided to open source Grok,
Step in the right
great
direction.
idea. Yeah. So if you guys, XAI, the large language model, the only one that has access to all the Twitter data set is Grok. And it's way behind. It's probably a year behind ChatGPT, even Gemini, but it's catching up quickly. It's funny. It's not trying to censor things. If you ask it to generate George Washington historically accurately, it will, so it has a lot of advantages along those lines, but that was a game changer for me today. Grok going open source is going to not only make it advance a lot more quickly because everyone can start working on it, but it gives it to humanity. It is a gift of humanity as opposed to closed AI, which started out open source and then suddenly decided, oh, look at all this money we can make. We're going to close it down. We're not a nonprofit anymore. So
yeah. And Elon has the right idea, is open sourcing things to allow the freedom, like you were saying. And to touch on what him and Jordan Peterson have been screaming from the rooftops is our governments and our people are reactive and not proactive.
Yes.
With countering things that could be dangerous or problematic. And Jordan Peterson was just on the Capitol in the House speaking in front of a committee about the fact that there are currently AIs that can tell with a 95 plus percentile of just the basic information they have social media wise, what you're going to buy, who you're going to vote for, all these different things. And so, you multiply that by 10 or 100 or 1,000 times when these AIs are continuously upgrading at such an exponential rate, you're getting the point where, like you were saying, the Minority Report, it's like it can predict what you're going to buy, what you want to buy, what you're instinctually perceptive and vulnerable to, whether it's pornography, whether it's all these things. And so like advertising is going to become more sinister. And there's a lot of ways that this can get really squirrely and really bad if we don't stop it. And so people like Elon are the folks that we really need to support and we really need to help. And with it being open source now, I feel like a lot of people are going to jump in, like Zero Day and a couple other guys, and just hopefully try to make some stands with it. Right. I mean, that's what I'm praying for.
No, I agree. I give credit to Meta too, because their stuff is open source as well with Llama and stuff like that. So like they've done that stuff, and I'm very happy that they did that. So, but I think the core principle there is that we have to make sure that humanity has equal access to whatever the capabilities of the AI is, whatever that means in 10 to 20 years time. Like open source is a fantastic step forward, but the step I'm really hoping happens is like, oh, only we have access to this tool thing that can help us do this thing. That's where I get a little scared, because that's when, okay, but what's the thing? What's the thing that's so powerful that you need access to, right? But I don't know how to conceptualize that yet, because thank God we're not there yet, but it's coming very, very, very quick. I was going to say something else, but I blanked on it. If it comes back to me, I'll mention it, but it was related to this AI thing, but I forget what it was. Yeah.
It's a little interesting, because like our parents' generation and I guess kind of the one ahead of them too was, the bomb, right? The atomic bomb is like
true,
duck and cover, right? And all the, you think about like the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff, and you see all these, interviews of just the average person thinking that, the world could end in any minute, right? And it didn't. Came very close, I guess, several times, but it's kind of interesting that like this is like our bomb equivalent. It has this great potential. but then it's kind of like scary and no one knows who's going to control it. And I guess the difference here though is the practical applications that can exist for good are infinitely larger than, an atomic bomb can kind of only just level things.
Not only that, well, that's exactly the point. And I, like, with a bomb, you nailed it. The bomb is like, you can deploy it, but you're going to have a gigantic amount of casualties. I mean, you're going to have a lot of collateral damage. With artificial intelligence, you can be hella targeted, bro. You can just impact one person. Just be like, hey, what is the best way for me to kill this person without anyone knowing? Imagine you have that power. Right? That's where artificial intelligence gets incredibly weird, because it's like, yes, as a society, we have, not to give anybody ideas here, Jesus, okay? Don't give anybody ideas. Please don't use that. But it's like, the nuclear bomb, we have it and we're all like, okay for now. And I think we'll be okay for a long time because of that collateral damage variable. It does give, I think, a little bit of hope to me that says, hey, even with really dangerous stuff, we seem to have figured it out, even though we had some rocky transitions to get there. And I'm sure we'll have the same thing with artificial intelligence. But it's esoteric by nature because it's such an advanced technology. But over time, I think humans will get comfortable with what the goal of the technology is. And that's what I'm hoping. That's the positive side of it for me, is that I think humanity has always figured it out, it seems. And so we'll get to the point where we'll figure out what the best way is to handle this technology, to make sure that at least we don't kill ourselves. But then you're talking about, okay, so whoever has ability to leverage it, then it's going to have a massive advantage. And then we got it. Okay, so what does that mean? We're going to have a widening in a wealth gap, right? Like it gets weird. The conversation gets weird.
Did you guys have any more points on that topic?
I just was going to say what scared the crap out of me is, and no one said it, and I'm kind of floored, is just the fact that, like, when do we stop feeding information to something that could essentially become sentient? I mean, I don't know how many people are gamers out there, but if you've ever played Horizon Zero Dawn, that's a perfect example of what could happen with this. The world could be overtaken very, very quickly with such an intelligence. If it decides, hey, I don't like humanity, it's the scourge of this earth.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't.
Where's the kill switch? There isn't one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's smart enough to build armor, and when does it stop? That's the thing. And I know people joke about Skynet, but this is like far worse. Like, people don't realize it's a growing 100%. Intelligence. Like, what stops that? When are we going to stop feeding it? That's 100%. What scares me.
And I agree 100%. It scares me too. And some of the very early, like extremely early signs of where that could go wrong is like some of the stuff with, like, the Gemini example I used perfectly. A system that is unable to accurately tell history. I don't trust it to make good decisions. It's like, it's quite obvious, Yeah. It's like, yikes.
That was a mask off moment right there.
Oof.
A little bit
scary.
Yeah. And then you're talking about the education system being a failure already, and then you're having incorrect things being taught by AI that's supposed to be the next trusted thing.
Yeah.
And there's something that you had said, which was, it is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education. So, like, we're losing curiosity in the same token, right?
Exactly. So, you got it. 100%.
On that happy note,
I'm depressed now. Thanks.
That's
we
why
started on the high of fatherhood, and we just brought it down to the depths of, we're about to be in the matrix. So,
okay, can I ask you a question about that though? Because I think this is, like, interesting. So, like, how do you guys stay positive as parents when you are dealing with so many difficult things around the world?
It's a very good question. I think doing this, talking to other dads, helps a lot. And it's also, what can you really control? Like, what's really within your sphere of influence that really matters, right? Who the next president is, we love to complain about it, but it's not really going to affect your life that much, right? Like, you know what I mean? So I think kind of just keeping that perspective, it's good to look forward. And, like, I love this discussion because there will certainly be new challenges that arise from AI that our kids need to be insulated from, right? There will be bad things that come from it that we do not want them exposed to, because there's going to be a whole generation of kids messed up by it, for sure. that's going to happen. But
and this is the first time in history, especially with social media, that we have access to real-time knowledge of something terrible happening every hour. So if you get plugged in enough, you will see tragedy after tragedy, and it will consume you. So one of the most important things you can do is unplug and recognize that, yes, there are a lot of bad things happening in the world, but there's also a lot of great things, and you have to balance your information diet. You know, if you eat a bunch of candy, you're going to feel terrible. And if you consume a bunch of bad information, you're going to feel terrible. It's the same thing.
Yeah. The analogy that comes to my head is kind of like if you're in a village and you have the walls that protect. So you build the walls, you protect your family, you protect your tribe, you protect your inner circle, but at the same time, you prepare your children, you prepare yourselves and your families for whatever's coming from on the other side of the wall. So you're aware of what's on the other side, but you're still preparing for it. So like with my children, what I'm doing is I'm teaching them how to think logically, how to think in dire situations with emotional regulation. We're starting them in, mixed martial arts for self-defense. We're helping them learn about programming and computer languages and like using and leveraging knowledge in a proper way and filtering that knowledge. And so like there's a couple of ways that you can just prepare your children. That way they can have the best chance possible for whatever comes, right? Because if they're clueless, they're going to be one of those crazy people running around screaming that's going to go first if something happens, right? I mean, let's just be real. I mean,
Makes
but
sense.
if they're prepared and you've prepared them properly to the best of your ability, they're going to have a lot better of a chance.
Makes perfect sense.
In terms of your own positivity, though, I think it's a choice, right? You get to choose what you're going to focus on. And but that's where leadership comes into, right? You have to lead yourself first, guard your own mind, and then you kind of set the tone for your family, so that you're not just spiraling on the negatives. I think it's important to be aware of it, whatever it may be, the danger that may be out there. But you got to kind of like quarantine it a little bit. Okay, hey, I need to know a little bit and make sure that I can protect my family from it, but let me be present in this moment. And it's a mental choice. And so I think some of that comes with maybe some daily disciplines of, you already mentioned it, right? Set this thing aside, your phone, leave it in another room or whatever, cut time in your schedule so that you don't have it with you and those kinds of things. I think it's not necessarily some huge philosophical thing. I think it's a very basic thing. You just have to make the choice and commit to it on a daily basis.
Sounds like balance. Just be balanced. Yeah. Be aware of what could potentially be an actual problem, but also enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment. Build for the future of your family. And look at puppy videos from time to time. Jeez, doesn't all have this to be freaking politics?
My wife and I, that's one of our favorite things to do is we look at puppy and kitty reels on Instagram. And not all social media is bad. It's a great time. We laugh at stupid reels together, and it's a lot of fun. But
I love it.
I had one final question for you.
Of course.
Not necessarily AI end of the world type of stuff, but as a father to be very soon, what is one thing maybe you either feel most unprepared for or are most fearful in terms of like in the moment, like, hey, I'm not going to know what to do, in those first critical kind of months.
I think for me, it really comes down to ensuring that I'm present, to be completely honest. Because so much of my life, I've been so focused on building something, right? Even, it's a thing like, and this is where I love my wife to death, is like she's so good at giving direct feedback, especially when I don't want to hear it. Right. And that's something that I've been working at for a really long time. So I'm deathly afraid that I'm somehow not going to be present because I know I'm not good at it. But I'm also this is why I'm embracing the challenge of being present so much, because that is the last thing I want, is to not be present. I don't want that. That's crazy. Like, why am I having a kid if I'm not gonna freaking spend every moment that I can with that child, especially with the goal of trying to make him as good of a human being as he can be, for not just for our family, but for society. Like, it's my responsibility to ensure that I'm adding a human to civilization that's going to be a positive force, especially for good, right? For good.
Yep.
So I'm not going to be able to do that unless I'm present. I'm just not going to be able to do that. So I'm just scared that my bad habits are going to rear their ugly head, and it's like, oh, like you're going to love this child so much, oh, but you're not going to be as present as you think you're going to be because you're constantly somewhere else. So it's like I'm afraid, like, because that's going to make me feel like a really shitty dad. So,
Yeah.
but that might be more insecurity and just maybe like an irrational fear. But it's like I that is one thing that is like in the back of my mind, and I'm, of course I feel confident. I'm hopeful that that's not going to be an issue, but knowing that it's going to be extremely difficult, I'm sure it might rear its ugly head, and that's where I have to ensure that I'm present with myself.
Mm-hmm.
That that's one of your weaknesses, and you have to make sure that you're constantly ensuring that it doesn't impact anything in a negative manner. So that's one thing that I'm a little scared
Well, I
about.
appreciate your honesty, man. Thanks for owning that and admitting that. And I think the awareness you have about it already, it will not hold power over you. I think maintaining that, and then inviting other guys around you to kind of be accountability for you on that, maybe just a weekly check-in or something, is going to help you a lot. And I just want to make one final point too, for all those, soon to be dads, or maybe you've got a little one, is you still need to make some time for you to recharge yourself. If you can't pour from an empty cup, Brandon loves to say that. It's such a great phrase. You have to fill yourself up enough to pour to others. So, there is time where you're going to need to take some you time still to make sure that you can be a present dad. And then, as important as your mission of raising your son is, you still need to have your larger purpose for your life, because eventually you're training your replacement, right? He's going to go off into the world, and you're still going to have what you need to accomplish. And it's good for him to grow seeing that you have more to do outside of just him, right? He's very important, and he'll know that, but kind of moving towards that greater purpose. And so that leads to my follow-up to this is, how would you define legacy? And do you have any questions about that for us?
Man. Like this is the part where it's like I'm spending way too much time thinking about what he's gonna look like. Honestly, like, I just wanna make sure that he's a good person. That's all. I just want him to be a good person, just kind, warm, accepting, loving, polite, strong, a leader, hardworking. That's legacy for me. Just a good person that will be a good for humanity. I don't know what the variables, like I have an idea what the variables are, especially after this conversation has been incredibly helpful to identify those variables and putting them to work in a way. But for me, it's just good person, because I like being around good people. You guys are all great people. This is freaking amazing. Like, why wouldn't I want to ensure that he's one of like y'all, so that things like this can exist? And I think that's legacy. So how do you guys define it?
Who wants to take it first?
So for me, I always try to leave the world or anything better than I found it, right? And so why not do that for our children? Leave it better for them, but also, you're equipping them to do the same. And, what you choose to do ripples for generations. Mm-hmm. And you could be that deciding factor of whether there's generations of good or generations of bad. And so that's why I step up every day so much. And that's why I try to love my kids so much, is because I want the ripple to be a tsunami, right? I want it to be a big wave, and I want it to affect not just my kids and their kids, but like all the people they know. We're supposed to be a light. And so, yeah, that's me. That's my legacy, is to be a light and to make sure that they carry that light forward.
Yeah. Love it.
I got a quick one for you. It's not my quote, and I'll have to remember who said it later. It's escaping me, but legacy is not what you leave for people; it's what you leave in people.
Love that.
It's the effect you make in their lives. And so, for me, I think one of the greatest legacies I'm going to leave is my wife and I both come from families of divorce, lots of brokenness, and our daughter will never know that.
That's
and
beautiful.
The impact on the world maybe isn't so big, but for me, that feels like climbing Mount Everest, So, I think we think legacy and it has to be this massive thing, right? Your name on a building or something like that. But as you embark on this journey, I think where you went with answering that question is exactly the right mindset, because those other things are going to come anyway, right?
Yeah.
If you're pursuing the things that make him a great man, you're inherently going to have to be a great man yourself, and those ripple effects will extend for a very far and wide reach.
Yeah, I love that.
Justin, anything to add?
Yeah. You mind if I go, Justin? Oh, sorry. My legacy is that I'm the interrupting cow who jumps over.
Moo.
Yeah, exactly. So with my father not being around, it's feels so good. It's like healing for me knowing that I'm there for my son. And so a big part of my legacy is being a father, showing a manhood role to my son and giving him the tools to be a great man going forward. So just changing that trajectory, and allowing him to have those things I didn't have.
Love that.
Yeah. No, let's just be real here. I mean, in 2 generations, no one's going to remember your name. You're just going to be another name on a tombstone. So I try to think about, living my life as if it was my last every single day, because that puts you in a perspective and a mindset to be the example. That's all you can do, man. Be the example. Make sure that the things that you are live on through your kids. Because, there's no other purpose in life than to, like you said, make human beings, but why not make them the best freaking thing possible so that, they can say, oh yeah, it was Justin who taught me that, or my dad or whoever.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
To me, that's
this amazing. Thank you guys so much, man. This was such a I came into the conversation just, being very excited, talking about what I'm going through, but also like looking to learn. And I mean that I feel so fortunate to have had you guys just share your knowledge with me, truly. So thank you so much. This was incredibly amazing. Thank you. Truly.
Man, it's so much fun for us to get to like pay it forward, This has been a really fun conversation. So with that, where's the best place for people to find Farzad and to check into everything you're doing?
Appreciate that. YouTube, Farzad, X, Farzad, Internet, Farzad, just the weird name, Farzad. Look it up. That's it. And like and subscribe right now on this video, right now. Do it. If you're watching this, you're coming from my channel, you better do it. I will come to your toilet and poop in your toilet. It's my threat.
I appreciate the shout out, Farzad. Thank you, brother. No, but seriously, this has been so fun for us too. And I think that's what you'll find as you go through your journey is it is always fun to connect with other dads and just talk about that experience.
Sure.
And to give, you'll be in our shoes at one point, sharing this with younger dads who are about, starting their own journeys.
Yeah.
And it's such a rewarding experience. And it's something that you'll always want to do. So thank you for your time too. This has been a blessing to us, not Absolutely. Just us giving you advice. It's been a lot of fun for us as well.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Thank you so much again. It's like, I just can't get over how enlightening this conversation has been. Truly. Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We are so excited for you and your wife as you start your family, man. We'll have to have you back in about a year once you got the baby boy out on the way, and you can tell us how it's going.
Count how many gray hairs I have now, and then we'll do take a snapshot, and then we'll see what it looks like a year from now.
We'll compare the thumbnails.
Yeah. I love that. Let's do it.
All right, Farzad, thank you so much for your time, brother. This was amazing. With that, dads, enough talk. Let's get climbing. We will see you in the next episode.